The sound came first, a sharp metallic crack slicing through the quiet night, the kind of noise that makes your chest tighten before your mind even catches up. I looked up from my phone and saw sparks flash near my Jeep at the edge of the apartment parking lot. For half a second, I thought someone was stealing car parts, until I recognized the bolt cutters in her hands. She stood there like she belonged. A middle-aged woman in a neat red sweater, posture confident, movements practiced, calmly cutting through the lock I just put on my Jeep hours earlier.
No rush. No hesitation.
No fear. Almost like she had every right to what she was doing. Across the lot, I was frozen. Because this wasn't a random theft. This was an HOA Karen. A woman who had already made a reputation around our complex for policing everyone else's business. Parking spaces, noise complaints, mailbox placement, even the color of welcome mats. And now she was at my vehicle, breaking the law like she was enforcing it. My Jeep wasn't parked illegally. My tags were current. I wasn't breaking any community rules. So why was she cutting my lock? The setting felt unreal, dim streetlights buzzing overhead, distant traffic humming, and that rhythmic snip echoing off the walls. I could see other apartment windows glowing as families settled in for the night, completely unaware something was unfolding below that was about to spiral far beyond a simple HOA dispute. What she couldn't know was that this Jeep wasn't just my personal ride. It was part of an active police task force operation. Not marked, fully legal for civilian parking. Quietly tied to an investigation that couldn't afford attention, mistakes, or the wrong person getting involved. And she was about to do exactly that. I should have shouted. I should have called the police. I should have stepped forward immediately. But I didn't, because in that moment, I wasn't sure how revealing the truth would land. This woman already believed she had authority over everything she could see. What would happen if she found out she'd targeted something connected to law enforcement? Would she stop? Would she panic and run? Or would she double down? I stayed hidden behind parked cars, heart pounding, watching her finish the job. The chain dropped to the pavement with a soft clatter. She reached for the Jeep door handle. And suddenly it hit me. Once that door opened, there was no going back. Whatever choice I made next would change everything. Not just for her, but for me and for an operation that was never supposed to surface this way. I took one step forward. She pulled the handle. And right then, flashing lights reflected off the Jeep's windows. Lights that weren't coming from where they should have been. That's when I realized something had already gone wrong. I froze as the Jeep door trembled in her hands, trying to process the fact that a simple parking dispute had escalated into something far bigger. It wasn't just any Jeep. I had been assigned to this task force months ago, working undercover on a delicate investigation that relied on discretion and timing. Every piece of equipment, every vehicle, every interaction was calculated. And here was an HOA Karen, oblivious to the stakes, cutting through my security like it was nothing. Before tonight, I'd always tried to keep a low profile in the neighborhood. Friendly nods, small talk about weather or pets, the occasional smile at the kids playing near the complex. But Karen, she had a way of turning everyday interactions into power plays. She'd already flagged my unit for excessive noise once. A neighbor had been laughing too loudly in the living room and sent a threatening notice about my front porch light being too bright. She didn't know much about me personally, but she seemed to feel entitled to control everything I did. This Jeep had been parked here for weeks without incident, part of the task force's surveillance rotation. I'd made it look ordinary, just another black SUV blending into the neighborhood. But it wasn't just about appearance. Inside the glove compartment were encrypted documents, surveillance notes, and equipment that couldn't fall into the wrong hands. My chest tightened knowing that if Karen had pried open the door and found any of it, the consequences would go far beyond a simple HOA argument. I remembered the day the Jeep was assigned to me. The senior officer had handed me the keys with a serious look, explaining the level of trust involved. "This vehicle is more than metal and tires," he said. "It's part of a bigger picture. Treat it carefully. One mistake and it's compromised." I had nodded, confident I could manage it. And I had, until tonight. Karen's movements were deliberate. She didn't seem nervous. Her face held that same smug expression I'd seen in her emails and complaint letters, the one that said, "I'm in control here." But I knew her confidence could crack if confronted with the right truth. I also knew I couldn't make a sudden move that would endanger the operation. Time slowed as I weighed my options. Every second stretched longer than the last. My heartbeat echoed in my ears as I scanned her for any hint that she suspected something deeper. She glanced around casually, seemingly aware of other neighbors but not of me hiding in the shadows. And yet, a flicker of uncertainty passed across her face for a split second, almost imperceptible, before it vanished, replaced with her usual brazen composure. I realized then that this wasn't just a confrontation about property. It was a test of nerve, of control, and of perception. She had no idea what she'd stumbled into, and the deeper truth was, neither did the neighbors watching from their windows. As she finally tugged harder at the Jeep handle, I felt a surge of fear mixed with adrenaline. The situation had escalated to a point where one wrong move could unravel months of careful planning. And in that moment, I understood the stakes weren't just about the Jeep. They were about everything: the operation, my career, and maybe even my safety. The question now was simple and terrifying. Could I stop her before it was too late? Or had this little HOA dispute already set something in motion that couldn't be undone? I took a cautious step closer, weighing every sound and shadow. Karen's hands were steady on the Jeep handle, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes, just enough to remind me that no one is invincible when the right pressure is applied. Yet I hesitated. Confronting her directly risked exposing the operation, and I couldn't afford to lose months of undercover work over a single confrontation. From behind the complex, I heard the soft hum of a neighbor's car pulling into the lot. I froze again. If someone came outside and saw Karen here, cutting my lock, it could escalate into a legal nightmare or worse, draw unwanted attention to the task force. I had to act with precision, but my options were limited. Meanwhile, Karen's cell phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down, just briefly, a tiny smirk crossing her face. Was she coordinating, reporting, or simply distracted by some petty personal feud? That momentary lapse gave me a glimmer of hope. Maybe she wasn't as untouchable as she seemed. But that smirk also hinted at a deeper side of her personality. Manipulative, bold, someone used to controlling situations no matter who got hurt. As I crouched behind the corner of a parked SUV, I thought about my neighbor, Lisa. She was a young mom, always polite, always kind, the kind of person who kept to herself. She had noticed Karen's escalating obsession with everyone's business and had been quietly keeping tabs. I'd trusted her advice before. She had a keen sense of people. If she had seen Karen tonight, would she have intervened? Or would it have just added chaos? The thought made my chest tighten. And then there was the Jeep itself, more than just a vehicle. Inside lay surveillance logs, photos, and sensitive task force equipment. Each item represented lives depending on discretion. One wrong move from Karen could jeopardize more than my reputation. It could endanger the people we were investigating, the operations we had set up, and the delicate balance of the entire mission. Suddenly, a noise from above, the faint squeak of apartment doors or perhaps the shifting of someone on a balcony, drew Karen's attention for a heartbeat. She looked up, scanning the lot like a hawk, and I realized something else. She thrived on control, but control could be a double-edged sword. Her obsession with authority might blind her to the consequences, yet it also made her predictable. I could feel my own moral dilemma pressing in. If I stepped forward too aggressively, I could scare her. But if I hesitated too long, she might discover the Jeep's hidden contents. The line between protecting the operation and risking exposure was razor-thin. Every thought collided with the next: fear, anger, responsibility, uncertainty. As she tugged at the Jeep door again, the tension between us became almost tangible. Our silent battle was no longer about property. It was a collision of wills, pride, and hidden truths. And in that heavy, suspense-filled moment, I realized that this confrontation might spiral far beyond anything I had planned, with consequences that could reach everyone in the neighborhood, and far beyond. All I knew for certain was that one wrong move could change everything. And Karen, oblivious to what she had stumbled into, had no idea how much danger she was walking into. Karen's hands trembled slightly now, just enough to betray her otherwise calm facade. The bolt cutters had dropped at her feet, clattering against the asphalt, but she didn't step back. She leaned closer to the Jeep, inspecting the door as if she could sense its secrets. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Every second stretched, every shadow felt alive. I could see the reflection of the overhead streetlight in her eyes, sharp, calculating, unaware of what she was about to uncover. My fingers itched to act, to step out, confront her, take control. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I knew she hadn't seen anything that could compromise the operation. From the corner of the lot, I caught movement.
Lisa.
My neighbor. She had come outside quietly, probably alerted by the noise. She froze when she saw Karen crouched at the Jeep, her eyes widening in recognition of what might unfold. Lisa didn't move. She couldn't. The tension was suffocating. The air thickened, every distant car horn and passing footstep amplifying the stakes. Karen glanced around suddenly, scanning the lot as if she sensed someone was watching. She smiled, just a little, that smug half-smile that had made her neighborhood legend for entitlement and control. But her eyes betrayed curiosity, the kind that could become dangerous. That curiosity might make her reach for the Jeep's interior. And I knew that inside the glove compartment lay evidence that had to remain hidden. I took another cautious step forward, careful not to make a sound. My breathing was shallow, every muscle tense. I couldn't tell if Karen's confidence would hold or if the slightest move would set her off. My mind raced through every possible scenario. Could I bluff her into leaving? Could I physically stop her without exposing the task force? Then it happened. The dashboard light flickered inside the Jeep, faint, almost unnoticeable. She noticed it. Her gaze shifted from the door handle to the interior, eyes narrowing. That tiny flash was enough to trigger a chain of questions in her mind. What was that light? Why was it glowing at this hour? She leaned closer, curiosity overcoming caution. Lisa stepped forward just a little, too cautious to speak, but enough to cast a shadow across Karen's view. Karen's head jerked up. Her sharp eyes caught movement. Her breath hitched slightly. And in that instant, everything hung in the balance. One step, one decision, 1 second, and months of careful planning could unravel. I could feel the weight of the Jeep's secrets pressing down on me. If Karen opened that door, if she discovered what was hidden inside, there was no going back. The operation, the investigation, every undercover contact, everything could be exposed in a heartbeat. Karen's hand hovered over the handle again. Her expression shifted, a flicker of doubt mixing with determination. My pulse raced. Lisa held her ground. The night seemed to pause. Every instinct screamed that the next move could explode into chaos. And then Karen's fingers finally closed around the handle. Karen's fingers gripped the Jeep handle, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed frozen. Then, just as she was about to pull it open, a sharp noise echoed behind her. A whistle, piercing and sudden. She spun around, startled, and I realized it wasn't me. It was another presence, someone I hadn't expected. From the shadows of the parking lot, a man emerged, tall, professional, wearing a plain jacket, but with an unmistakable badge clipped at his belt. Karen froze, her eyes widening. Recognition didn't fully register, but fear started creeping in. She had assumed she controlled this moment. She hadn't counted on backup, someone connected to the Jeep's true identity. And that's when the second twist hit. The Jeep's interior lit up unexpectedly. A silent alarm system, part of the task force's security protocol, had been triggered by her earlier tampering. The glow reflected off her face, revealing her shock. This wasn't just a simple community confrontation anymore. She had crossed into a line she hadn't even known existed. Simultaneously, I noticed Lisa, my neighbor, moving quickly toward the exit of the lot. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. She wasn't running for herself. She was grabbing her phone. Panic surged through me. Had she already called someone? Or worse, recorded everything? I had trusted her judgment moments ago, But now the situation was spiraling in a way I hadn't predicted. Karen tried to regain composure, her voice rising in a mix of authority and panic. "I have every right to," she started, but the words faltered. Her sentence was cut short as the man with the badge stepped forward, his expression calm but firm. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight of his presence was enough. In that moment, the moral stakes became painfully clear. Karen had believed she was simply enforcing community rules, that she was in control of the situation. But her sense of entitlement had blinded her to consequences she couldn't have imagined. The Jeep wasn't just a vehicle. It wasn't just property. It was a piece of a larger mission, with lives and secrets riding on every lock, every door, every compartment. Karen's eyes darted between me and the approaching officer, realization dawning. Her smug confidence was cracking, replaced by a volatile mix of fear, guilt, and defiance. She didn't know which choice would protect her, or if any choice could. I felt the weight of responsibility pressing harder than ever. My mind raced. How could I contain the fallout? Could I prevent her from opening the Jeep? Could I prevent Lisa from inadvertently exposing the operation to the world? And then, the man with the badge spoke, a single sentence that cut through the tension. "Step back. That Jeep isn't what you think it is." Karen froze completely. Her breathing quickened. The sound of the Jeep's interior lights flickering added urgency. Time had compressed, every second loaded with potential disaster. I realized then that nothing in the parking lot was ordinary anymore. The betrayal wasn't hers alone. It was in the misjudgments, the assumptions, the split-second choices that had brought everyone here. And in that silent, charged moment, I knew. Everything about this night was about to change in ways none of us could predict. Karen's hands froze on the Jeep handle. The man with the badge, calm but authoritative, stepped closer, and the red and blue glow from distant police cruisers danced across his face. Time felt suspended, the night air heavy with tension. I took a shallow breath, finally stepping out from my hiding spot, my voice steady but firm. "Stop. This Jeep isn't yours. It's part of an active task force operation." Her eyes widened, disbelief flickering across her face. "Task force? You mean, this is police property?" Her voice wavered, a mixture of fear and incredulity. That smug confidence that had ruled the evening vanished, replaced with raw panic. The man with the badge nodded. "You've crossed a line that could have endangered an ongoing investigation. The equipment inside that Jeep isn't just for show. It's operational, sensitive, and any tampering could have serious consequences." Karen's lips trembled. She looked at me, as if realizing for the first time that her actions had been reckless, and maybe even dangerous. Her moral superiority, her obsession with control, crumbled in the glare of authority. I could feel adrenaline coursing through me, but also a strange mix of relief. Months of planning, undercover work, and careful discretion had been balanced on a knife's edge tonight. And somehow, against all odds, the situation hadn't spiraled entirely out of control. Lisa, still near the lot's edge, had lowered her phone. Relief washed over her face. She hadn't caused exposure, but she had witnessed enough to understand the stakes. I gave her a small, grateful nod. Her calm observation had been invaluable. Karen's breathing grew shallow. I didn't know. I thought I was just enforcing the rules," she stammered. Her arrogance had dissolved into vulnerability. I could see her reflecting, for the first time, on how her actions affected others, on how her obsession with control had led her here. The man with the badge gestured toward the Jeep. "Step away. You'll need to explain yourself." But thankfully, no one was hurt. That's the important part. Karen complied, moving slowly, a quiet tension lingering in her movements. As the task force officer secured the Jeep and checked the contents, I couldn't help but feel a strange weight lift. The immediate threat was gone, but the night had left its mark. Karen's moral blind spot, my own hesitation, and Lisa's quiet bravery had all intersected in ways none of us could have predicted. Then, just as we thought the crisis was over, the officer pulled out a small, folded envelope from the Jeep's hidden compartment. "This wasn't supposed to be left in the vehicle," he muttered. Curiosity and dread collided in my chest. Opening it revealed intelligence tied to an entirely separate operation, one I hadn't even been briefed on. A sudden new layer of urgency, completely unexpected. Karen looked at it, her eyes widening again. Even she seemed to sense the depth of what had nearly slipped from control. The night, once filled with petty conflict, had evolved into something far bigger, far more complex. As I watched the flashing lights fade and the Jeep finally secured, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the smallest acts of entitlement can intersect with hidden worlds in ways no one sees coming. And sometimes, those worlds are far larger than anyone could imagine. The night wasn't just over. It had shifted, changed direction in ways that none of us could have anticipated. And for me, the real story had only just begun. The lot was quiet now, the chaos of the night replaced with a soft hum of distant traffic. Karen stood off to the side, shoulders slumped, eyes no longer defiant but thoughtful. I could see she was replaying every choice she had made, every act of control, every assumption. And for the first time, I think she understood the consequences of overstepping. The moral blind spots she had relied on for power were exposed, and I hoped she'd carry that lesson forward. Lisa approached slowly, offering a tentative smile. "You handled that better than I expected," she said quietly. Relief lingered in her tone, but so did a subtle pride. She had witnessed the events unfold, her observations helping me gauge Karen's movements, her calm presence preventing a panicked reaction that could have escalated everything. In her own way, she had been part of the resolution, proving that quiet vigilance can make all the difference. I looked at the Jeep, now secured and glowing faintly under the streetlights, the hidden compartments still locked and all sensitive equipment accounted for. What had started as a simple HOA dispute had evolved into a night of tension, revelation, and near disaster. I realized that this Jeep represented more than undercover work. It symbolized trust, responsibility, and the delicate balance between everyday life and hidden realities most people never notice. Karen shuffled her feet, finally speaking. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was protecting the community. But I see now, I went too far." Her voice was quiet, tinged with regret. For someone like her, acknowledgement of wrongdoing was rare, and yet here it was, sincere and unguarded. The arc of her character, from entitled enforcer to humbled observer, was subtle but undeniable. I nodded, letting the tension ease slightly. We all make mistakes. The key is learning from them before it's too late. The night had been a test, not just of my patience or skill, but of the humanity in all of us. Fear, pride, curiosity, and caution had collided, revealing truths about ourselves we couldn't ignore. As I walked back toward my apartment, I reflected on the layers of the evening. Karen's hubris, Lisa's quiet bravery, the delicate operation I had been part of. Each thread had intertwined, showing that even small actions could ripple outward, creating consequences far beyond what anyone intended. The neighborhood would go on, unaware of the near crisis that had occurred, but for those who had been present, it was unforgettable. Sometimes, life forces us into unexpected confrontations. Sometimes, ordinary moments reveal extraordinary truths. And sometimes, the choices we make to act, to observe, to pause, define who we are far more than the moments we imagine are important. As the last glow of the police lights faded into the distance, I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "Control is an illusion, but responsibility is real." And to everyone watching this story unfold, take this away. Be mindful of your actions, be aware of the consequences, and never underestimate the power of observation. Sometimes, the smallest acts can change everything. If this story left you thinking about the fine line between control and consequence, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because the lessons we learn, from a Jeep, from a neighbor, from a moment we never expected, are worth remembering.